You know that there's 5 prayers throughout the day and the night. And why did the scholars start talking about the prayer times? Start by talking about the prayer times. It's because it's by the entrance of the prayer times that all the obligations related to prayer commence. So, for that reason, then the scholars they start with the prayer times. Yani, the meaning is by the prayer time coming in, then the obligation of making wudu and basically getting up and making wudu and covering yourself and finding your qibla and anything else that's related to prayer commences. So we talked about that, and we talked about the difference between a prayer being wajib or fard, which is that according to the Hanafis, well, according to the Shafi'is, it's the same thing. And according to the Hanafis, there's a difference between a prayer being wajib and fard. And that difference for them goes back to the evidence, whether it's a definitive, indisputable evidence, for which they'll call it fard, or if it's a disputable evidence and speculative evidence, for which they would call it wajib. That's the Hanafi school. So then, according to the Hanafis, there are prayers other than the 5 prayers that you'll be sinful for not doing. According to them, there are prayers other than the 5 prayers that you would be sinful if you miss them. And if you were to say to them, so you're saying there's more than 5 fard prayers? They're going to say, no, we're not saying that. There's only 5 fard prayers, but there's other prayers that are wajib. And then if you don't know how they talk, you're going to say, huh? What does that mean? What's the difference? So they're going to tell you, well, the difference is the evidence that we used to say you're sinful for not doing it. If the evidence we use to say you're sinful for not doing it is indisputable, no one can disagree with, then we're going to call it fard. But if the evidence we use to say you're sinful for not doing it is disputable and uh, up for argument amongst the qualified imams, then we're going to call it wajib. Okay. So then we're going to start with the first of the 5 prayers, which is Dhuhr time. Why are we starting with Dhuhr? Because that's the first prayer that the angel prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the 5 prayers became obligatory. And when did those 5 prayers become obligatory? Which prayer was that? The Dhuhr, noon prayer. And when did those 5 prayers become obligatory? Uh, 2 years before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina. So this means, yani, how long did the Prophet stay in Mecca? He stayed in Mecca for 13 years before he migrated to Medina. 13 years after he became a prophet, before he migrated to Medina. So 10 years in, Allah revealed the 5 prayers to the Prophet ﷺ, shortly before they went to Medina. On the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, when Allah first made it obligatory on the Prophet and his nation to pray 50 prayers per day. And then Prophet Musa advised Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this goes back to the story of the night journey and the ascension up into the heavens. Prophet Musa advised the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to ask for a reduction. So the Prophet asked for a reduction alayhi salatu wasalam until it was reduced to 5. There's a whole story there. So that was all at nighttime. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he made it back to Mecca before the night was over. So this was a supreme miracle that he went from Mecca to Jerusalem. That takes a month alone, one way. in only part of a night he got there, and then from Jerusalem up into the heavens, all the way up until he actually went into paradise. And yani, that's hundreds of years in distance. The distance between this earth and the sky above us is 500 years. So Allah enabled the Prophet to cross all this distance in very short time. So he went from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then from Jerusalem up into the heavens, and then back to Mecca before the night was even over. Alayhi salatu wassalam. On that night, Allah revealed the 5 prayers to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Then the next day, the angel didn't come to pray with the Prophet to show him the prayer times until Dhuhr. So not at Fajr time, at Dhuhr time. Alayhi salatu wassalam. So the angel first prayed with the Prophet at Dhuhr time. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, so that's the first prayer that he prayed with, out of the 5 prayers, with with Jibreel as his imam. So when does the time of Dhuhr start? The time of Dhuhr starts when the sun has declined westward from the middle of the sky. Declined westward from the middle of the sky. What's the middle of the sky? The middle of the sky is what's between east and west. So not east and not west, in the middle. So if it's in the middle, if you were to face the sun while it's in the middle of the sky, that means you're going to be facing north or south. Because that sun, when it's really in the middle of the sky, when we say the middle of the sky, means at your location, in your own town, wherever you are, or wherever you are, even if you're in the open land. When that sun is in the middle of the sky, that means it's not in the east and it's not in the west. It rises in the east, though, going towards the west. It sets in the west, coming from the east. So between the east and the west is the middle. So Dhuhr's not in when the sun is in the middle of the sky, which is the real noon. Real noon is this, what I'm describing to you, not 12 p.m. Real noon is not based on a clock. Just like real midnight is the middle between Maghrib and Fajr, not 12. Real midnight depends on when Maghrib comes in and when Fajr comes in. And real noon depends on when the sun is in the middle of the sky. All that varies throughout the year as the seasons change. As the seasons change, the day gets longer or shorter, and the night gets longer or shorter. So the actual time of noon or midnight varies. So this real noon, which is when the sun is in the middle of the sky, and in other words, you can say when the sun is at its zenith, the middle of the sky is the highest point that the sun is going to reach for the day. When the sun comes out of there, going towards the west, even just a little bit, once he tilts out of there, then that's when Dhuhr time comes in. And since that's the highest point that the sun is going to reach for the day, that means it's not going to go higher. So when the sun tilts out of there, it's actually going to be descending from that point until the end of the day. Any question here so far? Okay. Now it's important to also associate with this movement of the sun the shadows. The shadows will, when the sun first rises in the morning from the east, the shadows will be very long facing the west. And when the sun is declining in the west, the shadows will be very, when it's about to set. When the sun is just about to set, sun's going to go down, it's the end of the day. the shadows will be very long facing the east. Now, the sun rises in the east and the shadows are very long facing the west. As the sun rises, the higher the sun gets, the shadows get shorter and shorter until the sun reaches its zenith. Then the shadows will be at their shortest point of the day. When the sun is at its highest point of the day, the shadows are at the shortest point of the day. It's like uh, whatever is the case of the sun, the shadow is the reverse of it. The sun rises in the east, the shadow is going to be pointing west. Sun setting in the west, shadow is going to be pointing east. The sun is low, close to the horizon, shadow is going to be long. The sun is very high up in the sky, shadow is going to be very short. So when the sun reaches its zenith, which is the highest point it's going to get, then that means the shadow is going to be its shortest point of the day. Then the sun is going to tilt out of its zenith. When the sun tilts out of its zenith going into the west, that's when the shadows are going to also tilt into the east. Because at first, when the sun was rising in the east, the shadows were very long facing the west. As the sun gets higher and higher, the shadows are getting shorter and shorter. Until the sun gets to its highest point of the day, then the shadow is going to be at its shortest point of the day. Then the sun will tilt out of that highest point of the day and the shadow towards the west, and the shadows will also tilt towards the east, tilt towards the east, and start getting longer. Uh, so now all that's clear. So I said all of that just as preparation, preparatory information here. It's like background information one needs to know so that he can tell the prayer times. That the sun rises in the east and the shadows are facing the west. They are long facing the west. And the sun sets in the west, the shadows will be long facing the east. And when the sun is at its highest point of the day, the shadows will be at the shortest point of the day. So that knowledge about the sun and the shadows is important for understanding the prayer times. Now, right before Dhuhr comes in, when the sun is at its zenith, you can know right then when Asr is going to come in. Before Dhuhr comes in, you can know when Asr is going to come in. Of course, we're talking about without a schedule, just by looking at the signs. So what you're going to do? You're going to say, okay, now it's zenith time. Dhuhr didn't come in yet. It's about to come in any moment now. Let me pick an object, any object. Let me see how long this object is. Here's an object. This object is 1 foot long. How long is the shadow of this 1 foot long object right now at noontime? It's only 1 inch. That's the shortest shadow of the day now. This 12-inch object has a 1 inch shadow at the shortest point of the day. Okay, how am I going to know when Asr comes in? Oh, it's easy. All I have to do is add the 12 inches of the object to the 1 inch shadow, the 1 inch zenith shadow. That's 13 inches. And then I'll just wait for the shadows to start growing again. And when that shadow becomes 13 inches, then I'm going to know Asr's in. And then, now, look, Vuller's in now. Vuller just came in. I just measured my object and I measured my zenith shadow to know when Asr's going to come in. And then, right in the nick of time, the sun tilted into the west, out of its zenith, starting to descend from that point. Now Vuller's in. And the shadow started getting long again. Now all I have to do is wait. And whenever that shadow reaches 13 inches, then I know Vuhur is out and Asr is in. Is this clear? It is clear? Okay. I want to give another example though. So let's say a person, when the sun was at its zenith, he picked an object. This object is 10 feet tall, and the zenith shadow was 3 feet long. That's the shortest shadow of the day. Dhuhr didn't even come in yet because it's just still zenith time. So then he just adds the 10 feet of the object to the 3 feet of the zenith shadow. 10 plus 3 is 13. So he says, now I know. Once this shadow becomes 13 feet long, then I'm going to know Dhuhr's out and Asr's in. Bam, there, Dhuhr's in right now too. Because zenith only lasts for a moment. Now Dhuhr's in because the sun has tilted out of its zenith and the shadow has begun to grow, pointing towards the east. And now all I have to do is wait for this shadow to get 13 feet. And I'm going to know Dhuhr's out and Asr's in. But Dhuhr's in now, just came in. I did my shadow reading right at zenith time. Zenith, which only takes only a few moments. It's only going to last a few moments. Within those few moments, I got my readings. And then the sun declined out of its zenith towards the west. Now Dhuhr's in. And Dhuhr is going to stay in until the shadow reaches the length that I have already predetermined, according to the correct knowledge. So now Dhuhr's in. And the shadows are going to continue to grow until the shadow reaches the length that we described. So the rule for that is Dhuhr goes out when the length of a shadow is as long as the object that casts it. The length of a shadow is as long as its object, its casting object, plus whatever was the zenith shadow, plus whatever was the zenith shadow. So now Dhuhr's in. We know when it comes in, we know when it goes out, and you should know that Dhuhr, it doesn't have a disliked time. It does not have a disliked or an avoided time. That means any time in Dhuhr time, if you pray, it's not disliked. Although the very best time to pray any prayer is as soon as it comes in. For some of the prayers, if you delay them too long, you'll be praying in a disliked time. But Dhuhr is not one of those. Dhuhr does not have a disliked time. If a person delayed his Dhuhr all the way till the end of the time, there's nothing disliked about it. But what we mean here is he delayed his prayer until he's able to say Assalamu alaikum by the time the prayer goes out. So that means he has to start ahead. He has to actually start his prayer before the time, before the end of the time. How late can he start his prayer without a sin? As late as he's able to fit his whole prayer inside the prayer time. Meaning by the time he says Assalamu alaikum, by the time he says the Amin, alaikum, Asr's out, or any prayer is out. By the time he says the Amin, alaikum, the prayer time went out. So he was able to fit his whole prayer inside the time. Then there's no sin here. That's for all the prayers. What will be sinful is for a person to delay his prayer until starting it is too late to be able to fit the whole prayer inside of its time. So Dhuhr does not have a disliked time. Then, so if you delayed Dhuhr all the way till the end, such that you said Allahu Akbar at a time that enables you to say Assalamu alaikum inside of Dhuhr time, even if Asr comes in, as soon as you said alaykum, then Asr comes in. Then there's no sin here. And it's not even disliked when you're dealing with Dhuhr time. And the second prayer is the Asr prayer. So its time starts when Dhuhr ends. And Asr is the greatest of the five prayers. It came in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever missed the Asr prayer, it's as if he lost all of his family and wealth. So very important not to miss the Asr prayer. Why Asr prayer is so superior? Because it's at the time when the people are their busiest. Dhuhr prayer does not have a dislike time because in the afternoon people are busy. Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Allah created the daytime for livelihood. So it means the daytime. In the daytime, the human creatures are busy doing what they do. Dhuhr comes in, they're going to be busy. So it's best to pray at the beginning of the time. But there's no dislikeness in delaying Dhuhr all the way till the end of the time. And then Asr comes in, best to pray Asr and all five prayers at the very beginnings of their times. And Asr, though, it does have a dislike time, which is when the sun becomes dim and staring directly into the sun is bearable. And its light on the walls and buildings is yellow. Now, if you delayed your Dhuhr all the way until then, without an excuse, you have no reward. No sin, but no reward. Because this is the time for the hypocrites to pray. This time we're describing now is the time the hypocrites pray. So you don't want to pray at that time. You want to pray before that. The hypocrites meaning the people who only pretend to be Muslims. If nobody's around, they're not even going to pray. But if somebody's around, then they're just going to procrastinate because they don't really want to pray because they don't really believe. And then, right at the last moment, as much as they could delay, because really it's not in their heart, then they're going to finally stand up to pray. And then they're going to pray real fast. And their head touch the ground like a bird pecked the ground. So this time is disliked to delay your Asr until that time unless you had an excuse. An excuse is like you're working. You couldn't stop working yet. That's a valid excuse. The meaning is, had you not been working, you would have prayed Asr earlier. But you were busy. You couldn't stop at the moment. And then when you finally got the chance to stop to pray Asr, it's at this time that I'm describing to you, when the sun is dim and its light on the walls is yellow. In this case, since you were busy, it's like you just caught the beginning of the prayer. Or also, if you had been sleeping and then you woke up at the end of Asr time and then you immediately got busy with prayer, then it's like for you, Asr just came in. Meaning you get the full maximum reward. Or even if you forgot to pray, and then right before Maghrib you realize, oh, it's Asr time. I got to pray before the sun goes down. And then you immediately got busy. Then it's going to be just like you caught the beginning of the time. And Asr time goes out when the disk of the sun is completely below the horizon. The best place to see the horizon is at the seashore because it's flat horizon. Then you can see the disk of the sun go completely below that horizontal line, the line of the horizon. And that's when Maghrib comes in. And what we are talking about as far as the disk of the sun being completely below the horizon This is from the ground point of view, from the ground level point of view. Not being in an airplane, not being in a skyscraper, not being in a mountain. Rather, if the sun has gone below the horizon according to the people who are on the ground, according to their view, then for whoever is in the skyscraper or the airplane over that land or mountain, he prays Maghrib like they pray Maghrib. Time is in for him like it's in for the people on the ground. Because that's the origin. The origin is being on the ground and seeing from the ground perspective, not from the sky perspective. So the one who's on the ground, seeing the sun go down, the disk of the sun below the horizon, and he verifies 100% for sure that Maghrib came in. But someone's in an airplane, let's say, or a helicopter, let's say, he's hovering because the airplane's always moving. Let's say someone's in a helicopter just hovering above him, and this one who's on the ground, he can see that the sun has gone down. But the one who's in the helicopter, he can still see a piece of the sun. Or the one who's in the skyscraper, or the one who's in the mountain. Then for all those who are high, Maghrib is in for them. Because the sky follows the ground. That's general rule. The sky follows the ground. So, like in this case, the sky follows the ground. Or what's another example? For example, you want to make tawaf around the Kaaba. You want to go around the Kaaba? You have to do it inside Al Masjid al Haram. But what if they built a first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor inside Masjid al Haram, not outside? What if they built many, 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 many floors? Still going to be valid because it's like you're on the ground. So basically, the one who's in the skyscraper, he's just like the one on the ground. In fact, he needs to be like the one on. He follows the one on the ground. The one on the ground doesn't follow him, as far as rules is concerned. That's how you know how to pray in an airplane. What prayer time is in and which direction to face. Then find out where you are over. What land are you over? Whatever is the prayer time on the ground, and whatever is the Qibla on the ground, then that's your prayer time in the plane and your Qibla in the plane. So Maghrib is in when that sun goes completely below the horizon, even if there's still sun rays shooting up. But the disk itself is down. If there's still sun rays shooting up, that doesn't prevent Maghrib from being in. Maghrib is in. And Maghrib ends when the red twilight disappears. And then after Maghrib ends, Isha starts. Immediately with no gap in between them. And the Isha lasts until Fajr time. Fajr time is a light that goes across the horizon, the eastern horizon, before the sun comes up. So when that light appears across the eastern horizon, Isha is out and Fajr is in. And the fifth prayer is the dawn prayer, Fajr prayer itself. So Fajr prayer comes in, or you can call it Subh prayer. It comes in at the time I just described to you. When the light of the eastern horizon appears before the sunrise. Horizon means across, from side to side. even if that light is very thin, as soon as it's noticeable, as soon as one can even notice that some of the light of dawn has appeared, then now he can pray Fajr. And Fajr has disliked time also, which is to delay it until the intensity of the redness. Because right before the sun comes up, there will be some redness in the eastern horizon. Yani, there will be some redness mixed in the dawn, the light of dawn. When this redness intensifies, then if someone delayed his Fajr prayer until then, this is disliked unless he had an excuse, like we talked about, like he was asleep, or he forgot, or he was working, and he couldn't stop right at the moment. Some said Fajr is the greatest of the five prayers. We take the saying that Asr is the greatest of the five prayers, but some said no, it's Fajr. And the greatest congregational prayer is Isha prayer out of the five prayers. I'm not talking about Jumu'ah. Out of the five prayers, meaning Dhuhr, not Jumu'ah, the best congregation is Isha. And then Fajr lasts until sunrise, until the sun cracks the horizon. Any question?
People are living on a mountain or a very high bluff.
Yeah.
They have to, no matter what they can see in the sun, they have to go by what people on the lower level would see.
Yes. Yes. With the meaning that they're not going to deny that Maghrib is in if Maghrib is in according to the view of the people on the ground. And if they want to just wait because they feel more comfortable that the sun is down from their view, then as long as Maghrib's still in, there's no problem. But if they learn properly, they're going to say Maghrib is in if it is in according to the view of the people who are down on the ground, at ground level.
My other question is, how does one um, chart the prayer times when it's cloudy or rainy?
Mm. If it's cloudy or rainy, then he will go by previous day or previous week, because the prayer times they only advance or delay by a minute or two every day. So he's able to estimate. If he knew the prayer time yesterday or last week, then he's able to estimate. And he's going to look at his season. He's going to say, now I'm in the season when the days are getting shorter, or now I'm in the season when the days are getting longer. And then he's going to adjust. He's going to estimate if the prayer time is in or not based on yesterday or last week, for example. Because anyway, observing the prayer times, it's not obligatory for every prayer for every day. Rather, it's going to be obligatory from time to time. Because if a person checks the prayer times one day, this check right here could suffice him for the next 3, 4, 5 days or a week, for example. And then he needs to check again because the time would be changing. But it is rewardable to do it all the time, just to do it, even though you could, if you wanted to, estimate from the previous day. It is still recommended to actually actively observe the prayer times. It is a very high reward because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن خيار عباد الله الذين يراعون الشمس والقمر والنجوم والأظلة لذكر الله. Indeed, the best of the slaves of Allah are those who observe the sun and the moon and the stars and the shadows for the remembrance of God. Remembrance of God here means for prayer. And that includes the prayer times and the Qibla. This hadith includes the Qibla too. The prayer times and the Qibla. Because you can also, inshallah, we'll get to it, you can also determine your Qibla by shadows, if you know how. Just like you can determine it by sun and stars and other things. And now the author wants to talk about praying early or praying late. Originally, these 5 prayers must be performed in their due times. Without an excuse, a person is unable, meaning he has no permission to pray these prayers outside of their times. Neither before nor after, although praying early is worse than praying late, because praying early is not even valid, while praying late is at least a make-up prayer. And these prayers, as you know, they are an extended obligation, a prolonged obligation, meaning their time comes in by some indication and goes out by some indication, and all of what's in between those two indications is time for you to pray. So the prayer time is an extended or prolonged obligation. If you want, you can pray right at the beginning of the time, or in the middle of the time, or at the very end of the time, in such a way, though, if you want to avoid a sin, in such a way that by the time you say Assalamu alaikum, then the next prayer comes in, not before. But for some prayers, delaying too long is disliked. But it's not sinful to pray overtime. Praying overtime means to let your prayer spill over into the next prayer time or spill outside of the current prayer time. That's not sinful in itself. So, all of what we're saying does not mean that you cannot pray overtime. You can pray overtime. As long as you start the prayer at a time that you would be able to finish on time, then you're safe, even if you pray overtime. Praying overtime means here that you made your Dhuhr prayer extend all the way until Asr time and the like. You made your Maghrib prayer extend all the way until Isha time, or you made your Isha prayer extend all the way until Fajr time, into the Fajr time. As long as you started the prayer at a time that enables you to complete it on time, then praying overtime is not sinful. Any question here so far?
No, that's clear, Sheikh.
Now, there's a difference between the men and the women here because the men, as long as they are pubescent and sane, they're not going to have an excuse to not pray. They're always going to have to pray. Even according to Ash-Shafi'i, even if you're tied to a pole, you still have to pray. Or you're bedridden, you can't move. As long as you are sane and pubescent. So that doesn't mean able-bodied. It doesn't mean something else. Sane and pubescent, that's it. You might be sick, can't get out of bed. You might be tied to a pole. You might be handcuffed to a gate. Who knows? You're still going to have to pray on time. But the women, they do have an excuse, a frequent one, to not pray sometimes, which is their menses. If she's a woman who menstruates every month, which is normally the case, then every month she's going to be in a time where she's not praying. So these obligatory prayers are obligatory on any Muslim who is sane and pubescent and pure. Sane, pubescent, and pure. But the word pure here is really only for women. Sane and pubescent is for men and women, and the word pure is for the women only, because it means pure from menses or postpartum bleeding. So without an excuse, you cannot pray early or late. What are some excuses? Sleeping is an excuse. Forgetting is an excuse. So this, what we're saying is, a person was sleeping, he slept, he overslept. There's no sin here. And then he prayed the prayer in the time of the next prayer or later. There's no sin here because he overslept in the first place. So that's an excuse. Forgetting is an excuse also. Not an excuse to not pray, just an excuse to pray late. You still have to pray. You have to make up that prayer that you missed because you were sleeping or forgetting. And sleep is not negligence. And the forgetting here, if the forgetting is not linked to negligence, if the forgetting is not due to negligence, because sometimes in the first place the person is being negligent and so therefore he forgets. In the process of being negligent, he forgets. Now this one's sinful. Like what? That's like the one who's just playing video games and he's in his chair, and then the prayer time comes in. He says, "Oh, I need to pray. All right, let me just play a little bit more though. I got time." And then he plays and plays and plays. Then now the middle of the prayer time, he says, "Ah, yeah, I still got a little bit more time." And then now he forgot. And the next thing he knows, the next prayer time is in. Ah, this one's sinful. As opposed to in the scenario I gave you of someone who's gaming, it didn't even cross his mind that the prayer time came in. He completely forgot. Had he remembered, he would have stopped to pray, but he just forgot. Then this one is not sinful. So sleeping and forgetting, those are excuses, but these excuses can't have an intention. These are excuses that you're not allowed to intend to do. You're not allowed to intend to pray late by sleeping. Rather, it's permissible for you just to sleep, just to go to sleep. But you need to be mindful. Is the prayer time in or not? If the prayer time is in and you want to go to sleep while the prayer time is in and you didn't pray, then either you pray first and then sleep, or intend firmly in your heart that you're going to get up and pray before the time goes out. And Allah knows our hearts. So we're not going to fool ourselves here. Meaning, the one who knows about himself, if he goes back to sleep now, he's going to miss his prayer. And he's not fooling himself here. So let him get up and pray first and then sleep. Or be determined for sure in his heart that he's going to get up before the time goes out and pray. As for if he believes about himself that if he sleeps now after the prayer time came in, and he does recall that there is prayer, and he believes about himself that if he sleeps right now, he will miss it, then if he goes to sleep anyway, then that's haram. Probably most applicable at Isha time. Someone didn't pray Isha. Now it's late. Now he's so lazy. So if he looks inside himself, he might say, there's no way I'm going to get up. If I sleep now, I'm not going to get up before Isha goes out. Then he needs to buckle down, fear his Lord, go ahead and pray, and then go to sleep. So sleeping can't have an intention to delay. But if you slept before the prayer time came in, then you don't have to worry. Meaning, what if it's just not Dhuhr time yet? It's just 10 or 11 or 12. Dhuhr didn't come in yet. And you fell sleepy. Someone take a nap. Here, you don't have to intend to wake up before the next prayer time goes out. It's not a condition. It's not an obligation. Because the next prayer time didn't even come in yet. So you don't have to have an intention here to wake up. Some people might say so, but it's not true. I was surprised once when I was studying overseas. One of the students of knowledge, he was under this impression. SubhanAllah. If Allah willed, some mistakes will creep into our comprehension of things. May Allah protect us. I mean, so this sleeping can't have an intention to pray late. This forgetting, you can't intend to forget to pray. So those are excuses, but it's going to be something you didn't intend to do. And then there's other excuses that you can intend if you fulfill the conditions. Traveling, if you fulfill the conditions of traveling, then you can pray Dhuhr at Asr time or Asr at Dhuhr time, or Maghrib at Isha time or Isha at Maghrib time. And when it comes to traveling, you can even shorten. And rain, according to details, you can pray Dhuhr, you can pray Asr at Dhuhr time because of the heavy rain, the heavy downpour. Or you can pray Isha at Maghrib time because of the downpour, according to details. Without shortening, though, shortening is only for traveling. Combining is for more than traveling. The shortening is only for traveling. Combining is for traveling and for rain, and according to some, sickness too. If you fulfill the conditions according to those who count sickness, then you can pray Dhuhr at Asr time or Asr at Dhuhr time, or you can pray Maghrib at Isha time or Isha at Maghrib time. All according to details. And yani, being able to intend in this case. So as a traveler, you're going to actually deliberately pray early or late. That's valid. As long as you do it right. And for the rain, to pray early, you can't delay for rain. So there's three cases here: traveling, rain, and sickness. In all these three cases, you can combine. But traveling has the most range. Travel has the widest range. That's correct. Because traveling will allow you to advance and delay and shorten. So you can do all that with traveling. Advance means to pray Asr at Dhuhr time or Isha at Maghrib time. Delay means to pray Dhuhr at Asr time or Maghrib at Isha time. And to shorten fourfold prayers. They have all that leeway when it comes to travel. As for shortening, does not pertain to rain or sickness, only travel. And as for delaying, does not pertain to rain. For rain, you can only bring forward. According to the details of combining for rain, you can only advance Asr to Dhuhr time or Isha to Maghrib time. That's it. There's no shortening and there's no delaying. And according to some, sickness is one of these cases that allows you to actually intend and deliberately pray early or late. So for sickness, those who validate sickness as a reason here, this is not a case of consensus. Some of them say, no, sickness is nothing here. Some of them said, you need to pray on time with your sickness. Because if you can't stand up, you're going to sit down, for example. But you're going to pray on time. All your prayers. Or you can't stand or sit, you're going to lay down because you're sick, for example, but you're going to pray all your prayers on time. But others, some said, no, there's provision to, if you're so sick at Dhuhr time, then if you believe that your sickness will get heavier, you're going to get worse, then you can bring Asr forward to Dhuhr. Or if you believe it's going to get lighter, then you can delay your Dhuhr till Asr. But there's no shortening. And same thing for Maghrib and Isha. So it is unlawful to perform these prayers ahead of their times without an excuse. And that's a major sin, and the prayer is not valid. And it's also a major sin to delay performing the prayer after the time has passed without an excuse. And that's a major sin, but at least the prayer is valid because it's going to be a makeup. Now, if you delay the prayer in such a way that you can't fit um, you can't fit the whole prayer into its time. You delayed in such a way that you are unable to fit the whole prayer into its time. Then this is haram. But it's not necessarily a makeup prayer. Makeup prayer is going to be, a prayer is going to officially be a makeup prayer when you can't even fit one rakat inside the time. As long as you can fit one rakat inside the time, even though you delayed that much, as long as you can fit one rakat inside the time, it's not a makeup prayer, but you are sinful for delaying that much. But if you delay to the point that you can't even fit an entire rakat inside the time, then this prayer is a makeup prayer.
It becomes a makeup prayer without the intention.
Yeah, it's going to be a makeup prayer, and you don't need an intention for a makeup prayer to be a makeup prayer. Meaning, you don't have to say, I now make up such and such prayer, or I now do a makeup prayer of such and such. Rather, it's enough for you just to intend the prayer you want to pray. And if the time has gone out, it's going to be a makeup prayer. Is that clear?
Yes, mashallah. Yes.
So, for example, a person, he didn't pray Fajr on time. And now it's like 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning. And now he wants to pray Fajr. So if he just says Allahu Akbar with the intention to pray Fajr, and the meaning though in his heart really is the Fajr prayer that I didn't pray. So then that's going to be a makeup, even if he doesn't intend in his heart, if he doesn't say in his heart, now I do makeup prayer. If he's just saying, now I'm praying the Fajr that's due, that means it's a makeup prayer here. And making up these prayers is obligatory. Ibn Taymiyyah said, if you missed a prayer intentionally, you don't have to make it up. I don't even know how that makes sense to him. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, if you just forgot, for example, then you need to make it up. But if you left it out on purpose, you don't make it up. So I have no idea how that makes sense to somebody. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. And some of the Wahhabis take this saying. So that, and they will tell that to their people. So when someone comes and says, I didn't pray, what do I do? He's going to say, just don't worry, don't make this one up. You left it out on purpose, it's gone now. And so the prayers that you missed without an excuse, you have to make them up immediately. But the prayers that you missed with an excuse, like you were asleep or you forgot, then you have to make them up before you die. If you die without making them up, then upon death, a major sin will be written against you. And if you have prayers to make up that you missed without an excuse, you have to do them immediately, like I told you. And not just that, if there's many of them, then you have to spend all your time making them up. There's a saying that some people take, which is if you have a lot of missed prayers, then you can just pray 2 for each prayer time. Like at Dhuhr time, you can pray 2 makeups and then pray your current Dhuhr and then go about your business. And then Asr time, pray 2 makeups, pray your current prayer and go about your business. So this saying, there is a saying like that. But I will personally, I'm only saying it to you just for knowledge's sake. If somebody were to ask me, I will not give them this saying. I will only give them the saying that I told you, which is you have to spend all your time making up the prayers that you missed without an excuse because they're due. They're due. It's just like a debt. If you had a debt that's due, and you got the money, then you can't just not pay it. So like that. So what that means then is if it's many, many prayers, then you're only going to sleep as much as you need to sleep to be able to stand and pray. And you're only going to eat as much as you need to eat to be able to stand and pray. That means no seconds. And you're going to go to the bathroom and you're going to run any errands you need to run so that you won't be ruined, like go to work, for example. And all your other time is just praying only and not praying sunnah prayers and not sitting to do dhikr because these prayers are due now. Wallahu a'lam. We should stop there. Now, the next topic is the Sheikh wants to talk about things that stop you from praying, such as menses or insanity or coma, like fainting. And on top of that, sometimes a person has incontinence of urine or some sort of incontinence, like he can't stop passing gas, always will release a bubble, can't stop himself, or the likes of that. Or a woman has sickness bleeding, it's not menses. So this has rules. When something stops you from praying altogether, like insanity and menses, that has rules. And when something doesn't stop you from praying, but it does stop you from purity, it does interfere with your purity, your purification, like incontinence of urine or sickness bleeding that's not menses, then this has rules. And sometimes a person have both of these cases together. So that's what the Sheikh wants to talk about next. So we should stop here so we can start that from the top. That one requires concentration.